I want the Conservative Party to be appealing to my children's generation, to the generations sort of in their 30s, 40s who have mortgages, families, career responsibilities, and who've been, according to opinion polls, moving away from the Conservative Party in the last few years. Those are the people we need to get back. And I don't think a sort of ultra-nationalist approach to politics and glib promises are going to do that. And that, I'm afraid, is the style of politics that Mr. Farage has pioneered and developed.
Now, one of the stories on the front page of the Sunday Times today, Nigel Farage says he wants to stage a takeover of the Conservative Party after the election. He claims that a resounding defeat for Rishi Sunak would create the chance to reshape the right. Asked if he proposed a merger, he replied, more like a takeover. Well, David Lidington was Minister for the Cabinet Office and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster from 2018 to 2019. He was Conservative MP for Aylesbury, first elected in 1992, and he joins us now. So, David, good morning.
Good morning, Callum.
Very good to speak to you. Is the Conservative Party in need of a takeover?
No, I think what the Conservative Party needs to do, what I think the Prime Minister is doing, is lead shape a vigorous general election campaign, hope that the people will trust us with another period of government, and in terms of its own organisation, to be a broad church. The Conservative Party, in the nearly 50 years I've been a member, has always been at its best when it's tried to have both a right and a left and centre, so bringing together people across the whole centre-right of British politics. And it's a big tent politics that says to people, if you share our values, our broad approach to the nation, to governing, then come and join us, support us. Doesn't matter what background, what colour, religion you're from. And I don't think Mr. Farage represents big tent politics. He always sort of comes across as a rather sectarian, at times, a rather sort of bitter character. He's this combination of joviality on the one hand, but quite intense and acerbic on the other. But I don't think he's the man to unite the centre-right. And frankly, if you were interested in the British people and British politics, I think he'd be a candidate in this general election instead of spending most of his time and attention across the other side of the Atlantic.
Campaigning for a convicted felon is where he's going to be at that point. A couple of thoughts then on that, because one former Tory minister suggests to Deputy Political Editor Harry York today in the Sunday Times, our party needs to be able to come back with people like Nigel, where we basically go back to being that authentic Thatcherite party, his natural home. And I don't know if you're kind of hinting at that, Sir David, in terms of that kind of broad church, that bringing together of people. Perhaps Nigel Farage, from what you've just said, might not be one to join the Conservative Party. But do you accept that with the sort of increasing importance of Reform UK, according to polling, that actually there does need to be some movement from the Conservative Party to be more inclusive, should it want to survive as a party of the centre-right?
So I think that the leadership of my party and the PM are right to say that if people go voting with Reform, sort of flirting with giving their support to that party, then in effect what they're going to do is make it easier to elect Labour candidates in particular constituencies and actually weaken the Conservative Party and the centre-right voice across British politics. But what I'm really concerned about is the number of voters that the Conservative Party is losing to the Labour Party and to the Liberal Democrats, and in particular younger and middle-aged voters. I'm all in favour, particularly as I get older myself, of us appealing to older voters. But actually, it's unhealthy if you become excessively dependent on any one age group. And I want the Conservative Party to be appealing to my children's generation, to the generations of in their 30s, 40s who have mortgages, families, career responsibilities, and who've been, according to opinion polls, moving away from the Conservative Party in the last few years. Those are the people we need to get back. And I don't think a sort of ultra-nationalist approach to politics and glib promises are going to do that. And that, I'm afraid, is the style of politics that Mr. Farage has pioneered and developed.
So then, perhaps not a takeover. Is there some room for something of a reinvention? Is that how we should describe this? And I wonder if there's a sort of experience that we can borrow from you as well in that kind of aftermath of the 2017 general election, where Theresa May's majority was evaporated during the course of that campaign, and whether that was a time for introspection and reinvention, and whether those are the kind of more appropriate words for where the Conservative Party finds itself today.
Yeah, I'd agree with what you just said, and it's a real challenge for any party in a democracy, if it's in government, to go through that necessary process of introspection, review, looking to regenerate, rekindle its own intellectual energy, because the work of being in government is just so grueling and time-consuming. I think the most successful political leaders, the Margaret Thatchers, the Tony Blairs, have still maintained something of that capacity to reflect on what they're doing and how the public's reacting to that, and try to respond and to renew their appeal to electors. And that, I think, is what the Conservative Party has to do. And it is wrong to keep harking back to Margaret Thatcher. I joined the Conservative Party just after Margaret Thatcher became leader. I mean, she's certainly somebody I believe did great things for this country. I didn't get everything right, none of us do, but on balance, I think she was a great leader who changed this country for the better. But that's a long time ago. For people voting this year, some of them were 4 years old when David Cameron first became Prime Minister. Yeah. Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair are people they might have studied a bit in school history lessons. So we can't just make our frame of reference what has happened in the past. We've got to look forward at the international scene, at the challenges of climate change, the challenge of looking after an aging population where health and social care demands are going to get greater and greater, the need to meet the technological challenges that we face from digital technology, from global competition, and renew our capacity as a country for innovation and for experiment and inventiveness in industry to provide the jobs and the security for the future of our people, the next generations. And you appeal to older people, in my view, by saying this is about your kids, your children and your grandchildren, giving them the chance to make a success of their life, to have a decent income, have the security, able to afford a house, raise a family. That is the future that I think a successful political party with wide appeal needs to be describing, and needs to have the policies which indicate they know the pathway to get there.
It's really interesting that. So Charles' text, as we're talking here, he says, "What are the values of a centre-right party? It feels like the current leadership does not espouse them or describe what they do believe." And that gets me thinking whether a reinvention, as we're discussing, is deliberate or is it almost inadvertent? And I'm thinking that if the Conservative Party returns the number of MPs that are being forecast in the most recent polling, first of all, there'll be a lot fewer of them. Second of all, they may be a kind of more concentrated group when it comes to their shared vision. And I wonder if actually that is the beginning of a reinvention, and it almost happens in inverted commas accidentally, but as a result of an election result.
Well, I'm not going to take anything for granted about the outcome of the election. I've been in this game long enough not to go for that one. But yeah, I see the polls as well as anybody else. But I've seen in 2017 we started with a 25 point lead in the polls, and it evaporated by polling day. So I hope for a result in the other direction this time round. But you asked about, and your caller asked about values. And I would say, sketching to do very briefly, that if you're on the centre right, you believe in both individual freedom and individual responsibility, and you think that people who do the right thing in society, put their effort in giving something back as well as taking things out, who obey the law, who work hard, save hard, that they should feel that society, that government is delivering for them. You have to believe in your country, yes, but to be skeptical about the ability of even the most best intended government to come up with all the answers. Yeah. That trying to say government's got all the answers, write a blueprint in Whitehall, isn't, in my experience, what always works best.
It's always really good to speak to you. Sir David Lidington, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.